Check 212. All right, we're rolling. All right, welcome to another take-home edition of Fight Back. The cool thing about the take-home edition is that it's whatever sparked me on my way home from work. You might have already seen my video on Facebook and on YouTube concerning the debate that's going to start in a little bit. I will listen, I will watch purely to comment later so I can say I've seen it and I heard what they said and how they said it and I saw their face. Instead of reading a transcript, I know that I've got some friends who read transcripts and you really can't get a lot sometimes out of the transcripts because you can't hear inflection, you can't hear sarcasm, you can't hear snark, you can't hear all those other things. You can't see eyes moving back and forth because they're lying. So you have to watch it. Frankly, it's like watching a traffic accident over and over and over and over again, hoping that the next time nobody gets hurt. The next time you see it, nobody gets hurt, but that's not how it's going to be. So I'm headed home, but that's not what's got me sparked. What's got me sparked is a conversation that I walked into as I was turning in my paperwork to leave work today, and had to do with culture. It had to do with somebody mentioned schools in America that can't do Christmas anymore because and one of the teachers who's frankly, I'm not telling any stories out of school, is more of the liberal variety, says this about inclusion, but it's really not about inclusion because it's about excluding the ability for Christian kids in their own country, in their own culture, to express that part of their faith, of their religion. Anytime you can't cut something out and say that you're being inclusive, because by the nature of cutting something out, you're being exclusive. When you tell somebody they can't do something, that you can't tell them they can't do something in the name of inclusion. You let them do things and invite people in the name of inclusion. So this narrative, this liberal narrative that keeps getting pushed by the mainstream culture and the mainstream media and pop culture it's insane and ridiculous and at the very least a big fat hairy lie. The fact of the matter is that there's no way that you can stop people from doing something and then call it, well, we're trying to be inclusive. No, you're not. It's just the opposite of inclusion. Just the opposite. One of the great parts about being old is that you have stories. And I thought of what it was like at my elementary school when I was in 6th grade and before. Lavelle Tompkins was the first non-Christian boy that I knew. I don't want to say non-Christian, but he was the first person who wasn't Baptist or Methodist or or Catholic or something like that. What I should say is that he was the first Seventh-day Adventist. I think he was Seventh-day Adventist or Jehovah's Witness. I'm not sure. I don't remember. I think he was Seventh-day Adventist though, which I didn't then, as an 11-year-old, know anything about, and I probably know less about it now. If you know something about the Seventh-day Adventist faith or even Jehovah's Witness faith when it concerns what I'm going to talk about, you can send me an email at WLS860@gmail.com. WLS@860@gmail.com. he was the first kid I knew that didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance. He didn't say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, as I remember now, of course, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. However, I'm pretty good about remembering what happened when I was 11. I remember him standing, but I don't remember him saying the pledge, and it was because of religious reasons. And in this little school, probably 300, maybe 350 kids in this little school in Progress Village, in this little community in Tampa, we had that worked out. Nobody was upset about it. It didn't freak anybody out that Lavelle wasn't saying the pledge. And his parents didn't get all crazy because we did. And do a moment of silent meditation, what they used to call it. It was time set aside for kids to pray if they wanted to. It was called a moment. We're going to have a moment of silence. And you know what? And his parents didn't get all bent out of shape because we were praying in school. You know, frankly, when people talk about they've taken prayer out of school, I'm not quite sure what they mean, because when I was in school in the 1970s, nobody prayed. There was no teacher-led prayer. I didn't have any teacher-led prayer in elementary school, either in New Jersey or when we moved to Tampa. I didn't have any teacher-led prayer in junior high school, 7th through 9th grade. I didn't have any teacher-led prayer in high school either, 10 through 12. I didn't have any teacher-led prayer at all. Now, at the football games, there was an invocation by whichever pastor was available, either from the Baptist church or the Methodist church, because, frankly, most of our kids that went to my high school were either Baptist or Methodist, or the few Catholics from Nativity. So sometimes Father so-and-so, Reverend so-and-so would come and do the invocation before the game. Nobody got all flipped out. Nobody the Methodists didn't get crazy because the Baptist preacher spoke. The Baptists didn't get crazy because Father so-and-so from Nativity Catholic Church gave the invocation. Nobody got bent out of shape. None of the Jewish kids got bent out of shape, and we did have some Jewish kids. None of them got all crazy. None of the Jewish parents got upset. I don't know if we had any Muslim kids or not. I'm guessing that we didn't. I'm pretty sure, though, we probably had some kids who were atheists and parents who were atheists. But they didn't get all bent out of shape either. Nobody wanted more inclusion by stopping somebody from doing what they normally do. And this is the deal. This is truly the deal. This is the deal that when you live in a culture that does certain things, you have got to go ahead and accept all of that culture. When you move from a Muslim country to the United States of America, you have said by moving there that you accept the government, you accept the culture, you accept the language, you accept the demographic makeup, you accept it all, which is why you chose to live here. Like I was telling the ladies at work, here's the deal, and I'm sorry that there's so much noise, because like I told you before, my window doesn't close, so I have to talk loud into the microphone, and there's a lot of street noise. Obviously, I'm on the interstate. But, I told them this. I said, if I chose to move to France, and I would never choose to live in France because France sucks. But if I chose to live in France, I wouldn't gripe about the government. I would learn the language. I would participate in whatever the cultural things there are to participate in. You learn to dig the people because you chose to live there. You chose it. You chose every bit of it. And I was saying to them, you know what pisses me off, especially about living in Florida, because there's so many people who live in Florida, especially where we live, who are from somewhere else, is that they move here and all they do is bitch and complain about how it's not New York, or how it's not Chicago, or it's not Pennsylvania, it's not Pittsburgh, it's not somewhere else. We don't have this, we don't have that, blah, 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 blah. You know what, and I'll tell you what, and I know it's not helpful, but all I say is we've got the greatest airport, one of the greatest airports in the country. You can go home. Who would move somewhere and stay there, raise children, and hate it? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. People who move to Florida and hate everything about it. It's so hot here. It never cools off here. Well, didn't you, in your hotsy-tossy northern schools, didn't y'all explore the globe? And you could see where Florida is, and you could find, or the internet before you moved to Florida and found out that what the average temperature is? Didn't you do your research? You're so damn smart. You couldn't figure that out? Again, it makes me nutty. And seriously, it's the same thing with people who move from other cultures here. If you move from Mexico to the United States, now you move from a socialist type of government that basically has a dictator in charge. El Presidente is a freaking dictator, and you live in a socialist scheme, and you choose to move to the United States, whether you do it legally or illegally, isn't the point of the conversation right now. Is that you chose it, that you were in Mexico, you were perfectly legal there, and you chose to either by illegal or legal means move to the United States, knowing full well that the government is different, knowing full well that the demographic makeup is different. There are a whole lot of white people who live here in the United States, a whole lot of people whose heritage is from Europe, a lot of people whose heritages are from Africa, people whose heritages are Asia. A lot of people live here from all over the planet. But there's a lot of white folks here. A lot of white people here. You didn't know that to start with. You got here and you went, what the hell are all these white people doing here? Well, they live here. They've lived here for 240 plus years. And then you're mad about the founding. This is what gets me. You're still mad about the founding of the country, of how it was founded. That still makes you angry. You're still angry about history. Well, if you're angry about history, there isn't a damn thing that anybody can do for you. So the only thing that you can do is live in a place where you're not pissed off about its history, if that means a lot to you. If you were born in America and you think that its founding and its history is evil, then the only thing that you can do is leave. Otherwise, you are the worst hypocrite ever. Otherwise, you're the worst hypocrite ever. Because you are living and benefiting as a person in a country whose founding, its very beginning, you are antithetical to, but you are reaping all the benefits of that. In freedom, in income, in mobility, all the things that the United States offers. But because you have a problem with its founding, you have a problem with how the Europeans treated the indigenous people. You have a problem with how the Europeans treated African people. You have a problem with its founding. that bothers you so much that you will get in the street, that you will protest in the street about it, then maybe this is not the place for you. Maybe you should go somewhere that has at least a founding and a history more to your liking. Otherwise, you're a big freaking hypocrite, and you always say to hypocrites, shut the hell up. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. That's the kind of thing that sets me off. You move here, and this is the culture. And there are people, and liberals for the most part, and I'm going to say it that way, liberals for the most part are trying even to deny that there is even an American culture. Well, we don't have a culture. What do you mean we don't have a culture? America most definitely has a culture. Now, it's a gumbo, no doubt, of a whole bunch of other cultures, that's for sure. It's gumbo. It's like, you know what, and the teacher I was talking about earlier said, you know what, it's so mixed up that in this gumbo, you can't even find the okra, which is okay because I hate okra anyway, especially in gumbo, because I know you got to have it to have gumbo, but God, it's all slimy and awful. I just really don't like okra. But the deal is this, you can take that American culture and put it in a bullet and make a creamy frothy shake out of it. It's still the American culture. It is what it is, and sometimes it's a little bit more intense or spicy than other times. But it is a culture, and it isn't like other cultures don't change, because they do. Other cultures change. Every culture changes over time, depending on government, depending on pop culture, depending on what's going on in other parts of the world. And it also depends on this. It depends on how immigration has gone. Are we talking about a group of people that have assimilated well, or not assimilated well? Assimilation is extremely important to what a culture is. Extremely important to what a culture is. So when you're having these discussions or you're having these thoughts about what American culture is, you have got to include all of these things. You can't just leave them out. They all matter. There is an American culture, like there's a French culture, like there's a German culture, like there's an English culture, like there's an Asian culture, like there's a Middle Eastern culture, an Aboriginal culture. Because a lot of places in the world have very similar histories. And to deny that other places in the world don't have similar history is just deciding on purpose. You're deciding on purpose to not see truth. Because every culture every culture on the planet has drawn from its indigenous people and the people who have immigrated there. Now, some of the cultures that have been the slowest to change have been Asian cultures because of their immigration policies. You know what? There were not a lot of people moving to China. They didn't allow a lot of people to move to China, and especially because when they started practicing communism under Mao, they didn't allow a lot of people from the outside or influences from the outside. Like I said, immigration and pop culture, not a lot from the outside. There was a complete shutdown of outside pop culture. So it didn't change very much. As we're looking at the Middle East and some of these Muslim countries, their cultures haven't changed very much either, for a lot of the very same reasons. Now, Europe and the United States cultures have changed because of the freedom of immigration here and how open pop culture is, how open pop culture is. So you're starting to, so you see a lot of, so you see that there's a lot of changes in its culture over time. You can look at how the Irish were treated when they got here. No, the Irish were never slaves, but if you're wondering where the ghettos came from in the North, they came because that's the only places that they will let people of Irish descent live. In some of the poorest areas of the cities of the Northeast, they were all Irish. So the stereotypical Irish cop could only patrol in the Irish neighborhoods around the Irish gangs. That's how the Irish people were treated when they came to America. But obviously, after a while, the Irish were able to assimilate into the culture, and so a lot of that negative treatment went away. It didn't have to be legislated away. Even it went away. It wasn't like somehow the American culture figured out, oh, y'all white too, never mind. We're just gonna wait for the Negroes to get up here from the South. No. The Irish were the European niggers. But they were able to move into these communities and become self-sufficient economically. And they were able to assimilate, and their desire was to assimilate into the culture, and they were able to assimilate. And that assimilation changed the culture. And that's something that we don't want to talk about. We don't want to talk about assimilation. So when people move here from other countries, they move here from Mexico, the idea is you must assimilate into the culture. Well, how do you assimilate into the culture? The very first thing you have to do is learn the language. It is the language of a nation that defines a nation. The people in France speak French. People in Germany speak German. The people in Sweden speak Swedish. The people in Spain speak Spanish. The people in Italy speak Italian. Government's done in Italy in Italian. Government's done in Germany in German. Government's done in Sweden in Swedish. Government in the United States is done in almost any freaking language you want. Any language that that you can request, because there isn't that assimilation. Now, in other countries, yes, there are, and especially in Europe, and it has to do more with geography, I think, in Europe than anything else. Yes, there are a lot of people who speak a lot of different languages, because moving around Europe is like moving around the United States. Countries are as big as states, and you can take a day trip to another country. You could take a day trip, and now with the European Union, you could live in one country and work in another country because the currency is the same. So yes, there's this language overflow that you have in Europe that you don't have in other places, and it's mostly because of geography. But if you want to do business in France, you got to speak French. If you want to do business with the government in Italy, you have to speak Italian. If you want to do business with the government in Mexico, you have to speak Spanish. because that's part of the culture. So if you're interested in moving to a country, then it is the first thing you have to learn is the language, because that's the most important part of any nation's culture is its language. And it's major language, a language that most of the people there speak. If you're going to move to Russia, then you've got to learn to speak Russian. The people in Russia only do business, the government only does business in Russian. The schools in Russia only speak Russian. So to inculcate yourself into that culture that you move to on purpose, you've got to take up the language. And it is not this exclusionary thing set up as a roadblock to stop you from being successful. It's just the culture. It's just where you moved. And until we can get a grasp on this in this country as Americans, until we can get a grasp on this, we are always going to suffer what we have suffered. We're always going to fight the same battles. We're always going to make ourselves easy to attack from the outside, from a cultural standpoint, because we are refusing to even recognize the validity of our own culture. All right, I got to get out of here. Thanks so much. I'm going to get inside and start watching this disaster. Oh, cool. Sure. This disaster called the third debate. We'll probably see you on the online airwaves shortly afterwards. Till we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody. And for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you.